Hey everyone, Drew here, and today we are going to build the very best Evertale arena team based on data. I used Nizetto's documentation of the lineups in the top Japanese Champions arena to derive exact positions for each meta unit with the help of different heat maps, weightings and modifiers. You can see the best arena team from November 2022 here. But after a long time of stability with new units rarely shaking up the lineups, this year brought a lot of meta redefining SSRs. Which of the new characters makes it into the new top team? We will see that in a bit. First, we must say goodbye though to our fallen fighters who no longer make the cut. First up, we have Mizuchi, who is still a great finisher unit, but there's just more and more units that actually ignore her counter. There's also more guards or pseudo guards getting released, which also hurt her ability to do a time drain. And then of course the time units of new units are just getting lower and lower, so the actual possibility of doing a time drain is also lower. Then we have Light Mirai. There are arguably better supports available right now, and the big problem with her is that her stun revenge is just less useful now. On the one hand, some or more units are actually ignoring that revenge, or some units are immune to that stun, and so what initially helped keep her alive and let her support your team for quite a while is no longer there. Then we see Storm Antares, who has a bit of a similar problem. That kind of stun skill set is just less useful overall right now. Although, of course, if it works out, that kind of stun all survival skin and the Thunder Heart are still nice to watch. Then Dark Jean joins them as well, and part of that reason I think is because of her poison focus. At least at first, when she gets onto the battlefield, she can't do much except poison and poison devour, both of which are not that good. And then of course her revenge getting ignored more and more often is not very helpful, given that that is her main gimmick, and compared to the new Storm Jean, revival is much more difficult to pull off. And then we also see Storm Elmina drop, like Dark Jean, also a previous #1 in the SSR World Rankings. And the thing is, I mean, stealth is getting nerfed recently. She doesn't have any hold ground, and her low hate, which was a big asset of her, is less potent nowadays. It is really more difficult for her to survive and really have a big impact on battles. Then we see Earthray, who previously had this kind of unique feature of replacing units with Shikigamis and sending them back right next into the reinforcements, so you can abuse some powerful entry skills. But now there is another unit who sends back better, so to speak, and Earthray's skill set at this point is kind of outdated, especially her survivability is not that great. Dark Raina is also going down. While some of her skill set is really nice with that kind of vampiric abilities and the strong entries and the potential for multiplication, she still doesn't make the cut for this one. A unit who has fallen far since last time is Storm Ossia. She was always that kind of pseudo guard with high hate, which is a bit less relevant now that there's more and more other guards being released. And on the other hand, her kind of stun side of the skill set, of course, also struggling under the current meta conditions. Then we see Lighty go down, who has some nice abilities and skills, but her Lucky Moris potentially hurt the team due to some enemies having savage skills or deadly passives, so that is probably a problem for her right now. And also going down is Storm Relosha, the original Storm Relosha, I have to say, because there is a new Storm Relosha now, which might also play a role in the original Storm Relosha dropping a bit. But just in general, her entry is less useful now. I mean, again, with stun immunities, etc. being around, and her skill set honestly has been outdated for quite a while already, so her main draw was that kind of entry effect and the step back, but other than that, she doesn't really have great things going for her, especially her survivability, similar to Earth Ray, is just very lacking. Now that already eliminated half of the roster and gives plenty of room to the new units to join in, but first we still have some platoon moves. Water Colin, Water Snow White and Earth Musha, these previous Platoon 1 units, all go to Platoon 4 now, which, given that the Platoon 4 just got completely wiped, isn't exactly a great sign for the future, but more on Platoon 4 of course later. Light Ludmilla, Haku and Water Sheen are also going down a bit, and 2 other guards are actually going up. Earth Anya is going to Platoon 2 and Bright Astrid is even going into Platoon 1. And you may already see what that means in terms of what the Platoon 1 direction is going to be. We already have Freya here, who is a burn unit that sometimes becomes a guard, and she has that hold count plus that can also be reset. We do see Bright Astrid, who is a 100% guard. She cannot be stunned while she is burning. She has some good damage reduction too, and the ability to set the battlefield ablaze. And the one unit that makes all this possible, or rather lifted the burn meta up into the spotlight again after a very long era of really bad burn conditions in the arena, is Commander Astrid, and she is joining the Platoon 1 on her own. She's already an extremely strong unit because she has permanent stun immunity, really low time units, a strong 1 TU skill against guards, the possibility to ignite all of her teammates or quicken them, produce a boatload of spirit, and on top of all that, if she is in the starting 4, she sets her burn teammates on fire straight away and gives them a stun ward as well, which really helps Freya and Bright Astrid in that scenario. Now, I commonly picked 4th unit to kind of complete that whole kind of burn team is Fire Mirai, but there is a much better option now that pretty much no team can miss and needs to put into the first 4, and it is Cinderella, the current number 1 in the SSR World Rankings. She has an insane damage output per time units, great survivability with multiple hold ground pluses and endures. The hold ground plus at first means that she can be used in a burn team as well. Only if she gets to the endure phase, then the burn might actually end up hurting her, but nevertheless, her Survivor Storm is just something else. And then you also have the Hypnoblast that is spammable, can put enemy units to sleep, which is very relevant. Of course, there's only some probability to it, but come on, she can spam attacks. Basically, she has the Veil Breaker on top of all that, where she gets another turn if she attacks a stealth or armored unit, and all that combined makes her a clear candidate for the Platoon 1. And as the first unit coming in from the reinforcements, we see none other than the 4th fire unit already, and of course it is Fire Elmina. She has that really powerful burn stun entry. There is some RNG in the stun entry, but there's no RNG in the burn entry. She will definitely set the enemy team on fire, and that in combination with the team that is already here on the battlefield when she enters, that should mean that she can easily do her very powerful healing burn drive when she gets the turn. On top of all that, she really has that kind of annoying burning heart, similar to Commander Astrid, where she gets to 1 HP, loses her burn status, and then kind of goes under the radar of the AI, and so has a good chance to heal back up. Next up, in the 6th position, we also have a unit that is somewhat popular as a starter, but that burn is still prevalent. We do see the arguably best guard in the game right now, Light Anya, who is the only one that currently resides in the SSS tier. And why is that? She has some great heals for herself and for others on your team. She has that kind of endure cycle that she can get going. If she survives an attack, she unlocks the endure, and if it is then hit again, but she subsequently survives an attack once more, she unlocks the endure yet again. And on top of all that, of course, she is a stun absorber, so kind of if you are actually facing stun and the burn team is still not enough to kind of stop that, she will definitely absorb all of that stun to herself. But even if you don't encounter stun and the burn team already took care of Stormfront on the enemy team, then she has these really nice gimmicks like instant gift turn that make her a real good help in your team. We continue on with another guard, the oldest unit probably in this top meta team, and it is Bright Ludmilla. Of course, as a 100% guard, it's easier for her to keep relevance, but all in all, really impressive stuff still from her after all these years. Her Shield of Eldine is still making her absolutely indestructible for a certain time span. And she is good against fire units. Of course, she has the elemental advantage against them, so this might be a showstopper for a burn team on the enemy team. She also cleanses everyone of fire, kind of, and it helps her a bit that Storm is pushed back a little bit, because that, of course, was a big weakness. So I think if the kind of January increase of Storm units dominating in the first platoons would have stayed, then I think Bright Ludmilla would have fallen a bit in relevance by now. But given that we see Burn as the strongest platoon type 1, this is not the case. However, with that kind of armoring her units, of course, she plays into the hands eventually of an enemy Cinderella, who can use the Veilbreaker to then kind of crush through all of them when Bright Ludmilla, for example, does her step back. But then we also see Storm Jean enter next, and that in the 8th position, she's just a really, really great unit. I mean, the one thing about her is that she needs any other non-conjured unit to die first before her, because then Storm Michaela enters the battlefield, and then this unit just has massive utility and survivability. Of course, Storm Michaela, when she enters for like around 100 time units, she becomes an undefeatable 100% guard, so already insane value there. But then she can, even if she has enough spirit, immediately revive Storm Jean if she died in between anyways. She can reset other entry units that are not immovable. And yeah, that endless cycle is just really powerful. And Storm Jean, of course, while she is waiting for her Survivor's Judgment to unlock, she can use her Survival Stun, which is also quite helpful. Once you have both Storm Jean and Storm Michaela on the field, the enemy kind of has to try to take out both of them at the same time to really put an end to the cycle, or stun, for example, Storm Michaela into oblivion. But unfortunately, stunning Storm Michaela too early can also mean that she becomes a guard for even longer. Then we have another Storm unit enter, and this one is Lancelot. Lancelot, of course, when she was released, kind of reformed the meta and brought a new level of unit strength to the Evertale battlefields. Nowadays, she's not quite as overpowered anymore. She really needs that kill to unlock the Endure and kind of get the deadly momentum going. I mean, if she does get the kill, and the instant stun is still really nice, and when she enters the battlefield here, hopefully there's at least one unit that is possible to stun and reach for Lancelot, then it can be absolutely devastating for the enemy. It is a very volatile unit though, because she can also just die fast. I mean, her low speed isn't helping her, but still she definitely has her place in the meta. One more thing maybe about these two storm units coming in and maybe synergizing with each other with the kind of stun skill set is that if your team, if this meta team is actually facing a sleep team or something like that, or a water sleep team to be more precise, then the burn starters can obviously struggle, but this kind of Storm Gene and Lancelot input could very well put an end to it with the elemental advantage and with that kind of stun weakness that water sleep units usually have. On the other hand, storm units of course are weak to earth, and there we see another guard enter the field. It is Earth Anya, that poison guard. Poison not being that relevant right now, but it is still good that she could be a showstopper for storm units. And of course she is weak against burn, but 100% guard still a very valuable asset, and no other way to look at it, because the next unit is another 100% guard, and that one is Light Ludmilla. It does make sense to follow up these other two units with guards, because you really want to keep that Storm Gene cycle going, for example, or even keep some other DPS safe longer. I mean, if you look into that row of units that we have here so far in the first two platoons, and then following up with Light Ludmilla in the third platoon, yes, there are some units coming in that are not guards and kind of leaving your team maybe a bit open, but for example, we see Fire Elmina enter, and maybe Bright Astrid at that point would be down, but then we still have Freya, who can be a part-time guard and take the heat off some of your other units. Then we see Light Anya, Bright Ludmilla enter. We do see Storm Gene, who with Storm Michaela has also someone who can guard for a while. So it is still kind of arguably a guard train that we have going here, and Light Ludmilla joins that one. She is an old guard, but still valuable as a 100% guard, honestly, even though her skill set is completely outdated. Other than that, guard 100% passive and the hold ground. And the whole kind of guard train mechanic doesn't even end here. We now see Sleeping Beauty enter in the 12th position, and you better hope that at this point you took care of enemy burn units, because she's extremely weak against burn. But if there is no burn around, then she will absolutely pop off insanely hard. Her kind of thorns and the cursed sleep, just really the tip of the iceberg. She becomes a part-time guard with a thorn, then kind of putting the enemy to sleep. She's also stun immune as long as there are thorns on the battlefield on your team. The Ashen Garden is an instant skill, so she can immediately do a very powerful thorn raid. And if there is someone asleep on the battlefield that she can reach, then she can of course do the Dream Devourer. That is not only not waking up the enemy units and healing her for 100%, but she can also steal up to 3 spirit from the enemy team. So just insane package. And the next one is also a sleep unit that should benefit from the setup from Sleeping Beauty already, and that is Ludmilla and Clarice, one of the very new units with that kind of instant nightmare. She can also force sleep if there is nobody asleep on the battlefield, but more importantly, hopefully she gets off that instant nightmare, becomes a part-time guard like Sleeping Beauty sometimes does, but she will stay a guard until she is kind of would be defeated and then heals back for 100%. Of course, she does need kills to do that, and then she unlocks also something like the extremely powerful Savage Knockout, which also should take care of even more of enemy sleep units. I mean, honestly, if there are some burn units that still survive, then Ludmilla and Clarice should take care of them, especially as she can also evade 2 target attacks. So someone like Commander Astrid with the Burning Blaze can not even touch her. It's good that Ludmilla and Clarice takes care of burn units, because the next unit that enters the field is again an earth unit, that is Earth Ossia, and she's that kind of poison sleep hybrid. She benefits from other sleep units that are around her in this lineup, because she can always get that kind of passive heal But with her attack and with that kind of counter and going under 50% to poison non-sleeping enemies, she already is a big help, and of course she can get off some strong 2-target attacks. Then we see an older unit enter. We see Water Jean in the 15th position here, and she has that kind of sleep entry and of course can summon Water Michaela, who is another part-time sleep guard whenever Water Jean and Water Michaela are together on the field. And on top of that, of course, she is a very, very powerful sleep DPS with 2-target attacks. So both of them together can, of course, make a lot of damage to the enemy team if there is a lot of them being asleep, which isn't that unlikely given the previous units that enter before them. And now in the 16th position in the Platoon 4, we finally see, I guess, a more pure supporter, and this one is Haku. She supports the team with heals and give turns against potential stunners, which is a risk at this point when you are more focused on water, although someone like Earth Ossia and Sleeping Beauty, of course, still very, very good against a potential stun team. That's why you have that kind of mix going here between that kind of earth and water to cover each other in terms of weaknesses. Another good point is that at this point, hopefully there aren't that many passive ignoring units out on the field anymore, and hopefully Haku gets another revival at the end of the reinforcements when she gets killed. And then we finally see the almighty Earth Musha with the Stealthy Vengeance being relegated to the 17th position because she can't keep up with the burn that is going on earlier, so cannot take advantage of the Stealthy Vengeance that much anymore. It's still really good because at some points maybe it wakes her up from some cursed sleep, for example, when someone on her team dies. The sleep units that come before her should have taken care of eventual burn units already, so that is taking care of one of her main weaknesses, being that she has that kind of hold ground that should keep her alive, and then she can do the Assassin's Drain and of course do some significant damage with the double attacks on the enemy team. Next up we see Water Colin, who causes some more disruption in the end. Water Colin still a valid pick for the first platoon where she was in November. She could possibly take out someone like Bright Astrid and make a burn team, an enemy burn team, more susceptible to attacks, especially in combination with some other water sleep units. But of course, it makes you very weak against potential storm platoon ones. And right now, it seems like the burn platoons are still very much favored. But all that being said, Water Colin still a good unit that caused some disruptions with the imposters, putting them on the enemy team. She still has that hold ground plus going for her, and if she gets that kill, which is pretty easy for her, then she also unlocks the very powerful Savage Force. And of course, always nice, her Spirit Loot when you kill enemy units. Then in the 19th position we have Water Snow White, who hopefully benefits from some sleep still being around, some sleep units on your team when she comes onto the battlefield, because that kind of stealth and counter skill set that she has and had and made her so powerful was a bit nerfed. She still has that kind of Dream Hunter skill that is really strong and stealths her. And of course, if she gets a kill, then there is the Deadly Sleep. So also nice combination with some of the other sleep units. But right now, there is no space for her further up. I mean, again, I can see a world where she can go into a platoon 1 still with someone like Water Colin, with Ludmilla and Clarice. But right now, in the data, she is relegated towards the end, and she is really suffering from not having any hold ground or endure. And then finally, in the 20th position, we see another new unit coming in, and this one is actually very, very new, and so maybe this one still will change. Maybe she will keep that position or move up or not manifest herself into the meta. It is the new Storm Rolosha 2.0 Giga Rolosha, or however you want to call her, she has that really great entry. Hopefully at this point when she enters the battlefield there are no more stun immunities around, so she can make use of that entry. And then the Chrono Chaos, of course. Great potentially finisher unit as well. I mean, yes, she quickens your team, so maybe enables a comeback. She hopefully gets a kill more easily at this point, and can then use the Savage Step Back even if there are no reinforcements left, and kind of do it all again. So hopefully at this point, you know, any weaknesses of her are no longer that available on the battlefield, and then she can really pull off some great stuff, I think. So a good finisher unit in Giga Rolosha. Of course, she could also come in earlier. I mean, this is still a very new unit, but she can be very powerful if at this point you are facing off against another sleep team and might give you the edge there, not only because of the elemental advantage, but also because of the stunning that will set back the enemy team, and of course the sleep immunities that she gives to your other units. So there we have it, the new top arena meta team based on data right now, and we see Cinderella starting out in front with these burn units. Commander Astrid, Bright Astrid and Freya. Then another burn unit comes in with Fire Elmina. We see 2 guards next with Light Anya, Bright Ludmilla. Then 2 storm units, Storm Jean and Lancelot. 2 more guards with Earth Anya and Light Ludmilla, and then the kind of sleep front led by Sleeping Beauty, Ludmilla and Clarice, then Earth Orsia and Water Jean. Some support in Haku, the previous dominating stealth unit, Earth Musha, the Disruptor, Water Corlin, and the deadly sleep unit, Water Snow White. And rounding it all out is the new Storm Rolosha. Thanks again to nizetto for the position data that this is based on, and also to Zarek for the tier list template with the portrait pictures that I used here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to become a true carrot. It really means a lot to me. And as always, thanks for watching.